The German Shepherd collapsed just outside the emergency room, his massive frame trembling on the hot concrete. Blood seeped from torn pads on his paws, leaving streaks on the ground behind him. His chest heaved with shallow, rattling breaths, but his amber eyes remained locked on the automatic doors inside. Chaos moved with purpose. Doctors and nurses swarmed around a tiny figure on a stretcher. 8-year-old Emma Reed lay unconscious, her skin pale, her chest rising faintly beneath a tangled mess of wires and oxygen tubes. No one noticed the dog outside. Not yet. Max didn't care about the pain. Every nerve in his body screamed to stop, to lie down, to give up. But he couldn't not until he knew she was safe, as the automatic doors hissed closed behind the medical team. Max whimpered, summoning one last ounce of strength to drag himself forward. He collapsed again mere inches from the threshold. A security guard stepped forward, hand already on his radio. "There's a dog out here, looks injured. Call animal control." But before anyone could act, the dog's eyes shifted toward the door again. Still waiting. Still hoping. 8-year-old Emma Reed was born with a heart that beat unevenly, sometimes too slow, sometimes too fast. Doctors had called it a congenital defect, something she'd likely carry for life. Her mother, Emily, had learned to live with the constant worry medications monitors, late-night emergency calls, but nothing prepared them for the day. Jacob didn't come home. Jacob Reed had been more than just a husband and father. He was an aerospace engineer, a fixer of broken things, but even he couldn't fix the malfunction that brought down the test aircraft he was riding. The news shattered Emily, but it was Emma who took the loss. The hardest, she stopped speaking, just stopped. In the weeks that followed, Emily tried everything: therapy, toys, family visits, but nothing reached her daughter until Max Jacob had brought Max home 2 months before the accident. The German Shepherd had been scheduled for euthanasia at a local shelter labeled aggressive unadoptable. Jacob, a quiet man with a knack for sensing the overlooked, had seen something else. "He's not mean." He told Emily, "He's just waiting for someone to understand him." It was love at first glance. Emma, still fragile from a hospital stay, had lit up when Max cautiously placed his head in her lap. From that day forward, they were inseparable. Max became her guardian, her confidant, her shadow. He lay beside her bed at night, walked slowly beside her during their daily strolls, always alert to her breathing, her color, her energy. Emily used to joke that Max was better than a heart monitor, and often he was after Jacob's death. Max became more than just a pet. He was a lifeline for Emma, and for Emily too. He filled the quiet spaces Jacob had left behind with silent loyalty. They lived quietly in a modest home outside Denver each day, followed the same careful rhythm: morning medications, short walks, quiet reading. Emma still didn't talk much, but with Max she didn't have to. He seemed to understand everything she couldn't say. What none of them knew was that Max's greatest act of loyalty was yet to come, and it would test every lesson his past had taught him. The morning had started like any other. A light breeze danced through the trees at Crestline Park as Emma and Max followed their usual walking route. Emily trailed a few steps behind, chatting on the phone with Emma's pediatrician about adjusting medications. The sun was bright but not overbearing, and for once Emma had a bit more color in her cheeks. Max walked close to her side, alert but calm. Emma held his leash gently in one hand, the other tucked into her hoodie pocket. She hadn't said a word all morning, but she hummed softly, a barely audible tune Max had come to recognize as her feeling safe. Then in an instant, the world shifted. Emma stumbled, her knees buckled. Max's ears shot up by the time Emily dropped her phone and rushed forward. Emma had collapsed on the grass. Her small frame trembled, her breathing shallow and rapid, eyes wide but unfocused. "Emma!" Emily cried, falling to her knees. But Max was already moving. He nuzzled Emma's face, barked sharply, then took off in the direction of the nearest path. His instincts kicking in like a switch flipped. He sprinted down the trail, scanning for help, when he spotted a jogger in the distance. He barked wildly, circling, darting back toward Emma, then back again, urging the man to follow the jogger. Hesitated, then understood. "Something's wrong," he muttered and ran after the dog. When they arrived, Emily was cradling Emma's head, tears streaming down her face. The man dialed 911, voice steady despite the urgency. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived. EMTs loaded Emma onto a stretcher, checking her vitals, pulses, rapid, unstable rhythm. "Let's move." Max tried to jump into the back, but they stopped him. "No dogs allowed," one of the EMTs said. Emily looked up from the passenger seat, eyes pleading. "Please, he found help. He saved her." But it didn't matter. The doors slammed shut. The siren wailed. Max stood frozen for a moment, then ran. The ambulance disappeared down the main road, sirens howling through the morning air. Most would have given up, but Max wasn't like most. His legs burned. His chest heaved, but he ran. He followed the flashing red lights as they weaved through traffic, sprinting across intersections, darting between honking cars. The pavement scorched his paws, already raw from the sprint. Through the park, blood began to trail behind him, but Max never slowed. People turned their heads as he passed. Some gasped, others pulled out phones. A cyclist swerved. "Is that dog chasing an ambulance?" Someone else recorded the moment. "He's bleeding." They whispered, "He's not stopping," but the footage spread like wildfire. A German shepherd, limping, hurt, but relentless, chasing an ambulance with everything he had. Max pressed on through side streets and alleyways, cutting corners. The ambulance couldn't. Every time the red and white vehicle reappeared ahead, it renewed his drive. He didn't know where it was going, but he knew who was inside at the 5-meter mark. His pace faltered. His front right paw began to drag. He stumbled but didn't fall. Not yet. By the 8th mile, he could hardly breathe, but the hospital came into view. He crossed the final intersection just as the ambulance pulled into the emergency bay. Nurses and paramedics rushed Emma inside. Max limped toward the entrance. Every step was agony. Blood dripped from his paws. His coat, once shiny and clean, was matted with sweat, dirt, and pain. A guard stepped forward. "Hey, get back. This is a restricted area." Max ignored him. He tried to climb the short steps to the sliding doors, but his legs buckled. He collapsed hard, his head hitting the concrete, but his eyes never wavered through the glass doors. He could still see the blur of Emma's stretcher vanishing down a corridor, and that was enough. He would wait, even if it killed him. The emergency bay was buzzing as nurses wheeled Emma into the trauma unit. Her vitals were unstable, and the cardiology team was already on standby inside. It was a whirlwind of wires, monitors, and urgent voices. But just beyond those sliding doors, Max lay motionless, blood still pooling beneath his torn paws. Security had already called animal control. "He's not aggressive," one nurse muttered. "He looks like he's been through hell. He needs help," another added. "But he shouldn't be here." That's when Karen Hall, a seasoned social worker, arrived. She had heard the commotion on her way into the hospital and paused at the sight of Max. "What's going on?" she asked. "Dog chased the ambulance here." The guard explained. "Collapsed right at the door. No tags, no owner in sight." Heron knelt beside Max, who tried weakly to lift his head. A nurse nearby whispered, "He followed the girl, the one we just brought in." "Emma Reed." Karen looked at the security guard. "Call off animal control." "I can't just do it. That dog didn't run 20 kilometers just to be caged." Karen's voice was firm but calm. Just then, Elena, the ICU nurse assigned to Emma, stepped outside. She had seen the video circulating on social media. Her voice caught in her throat when she saw Max up close, battered, barely breathing. "That's him," she said softly. "The dog from the video. He saved her life." Elena turned to Karen. "We need to get him inside." "But the rules," the guard protested. "The rules don't cover this." Elena interrupted. "He's not just a dog, he's her lifeline." That night, under the cover of low lights and whispered approvals, Max was quietly wheeled through a back hallway and placed in a corner of the ICU where he could see Emma through the glass. Her monitors beeped erratically. The doctors were planning emergency heart surgery. Her chances were uncertain. Karen stayed beside Max, gently stroking his fur. "You got her here," she whispered. "Now let us try to keep her here." Emily had been in the front seat of the ambulance, clutching Emma's backpack to her chest. Her hands trembling, the entire ride she couldn't see what was happening. In the back, only heard bits of medical jargon and the occasional warning tone from the machines. The fear was suffocating when they arrived at the hospital. She followed the stretcher in a daze, barely noticing the paramedics shouting instructions or the nurses rushing beside her. Emma looked so small, so still then. As the sliding doors of the ER opened, Emily heard a voice behind her. Now that dog, he ran all the way here, she turned. There on the concrete was Max, bleeding, panting, shaking but alive. Her heart cracked. She rushed to him, dropping to her knees. Max, she breathed Heron halt. The hospital's social worker had arrived just moments earlier. She stepped forward as Emily cradled Max's head. He followed the ambulance, Karen said gently. We believe that little girl means everything to him. Elena joined them. Emma's going into surgery now, it's critical. Emily looked toward the O. Her voice shook. Can he stay? Heron nodded. If you sign a temporary therapy animal petition, he can remain in ICU during her recovery. Give me the paperwork, Emily said while Emma was rushed into surgery. Max was wheeled to a small observation area near the O. A nurse wrapped his paws and gave him water, but Max never took his eyes off the doors. Emily stayed beside him. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. You didn't just save her. You brought her hope and me too. Time passed slowly, then the doors opened. The surgeon appeared, face calm but serious. She made it through, he said. Now we wait. The next 48 hours are critical. They wheeled Max into the ICU the next morning, carefully positioning his bed in a quiet corner, facing Emma's room. A nurse had stayed overnight to monitor both of them. Emma in her post-op stillness, Max in a quiet exhaustion that seemed to mirror hers. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just watched Emma lay motionless, surrounded by a web of tubes and beeping monitors. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Doctors had done all they could now. It was up to her body to fight. Emily sat by the window holding her daughter's hand, eyes barely open from lack of sleep. She turned when she heard the wheels of Max's bed roll and their eyes met. He hasn't moved since last night, the nurse said softly. He just keeps looking at her. Emily walked over and knelt beside him. Do you want to see her? She whispered as if understanding. Max tried to stand. His legs shook, but he rose slowly. The nurse opened the glass door between them. Max limped in. He made his way to Emma's bedside and lay down gently, resting his head near her hand. For a long while, nothing happened. Then her fingers twitched. Emily gasped. Monitors beeped one by one. Emma's vitals started to climb. Her oxygen improved, her heart rate steadied. Emma, Emily called gently. Emma's eyelids fluttered. She groaned, lips dry. Her eyes blinked open and landed on Max. A tiny smile curved on her face. Max. Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. Nurses exchanged looks of disbelief. He'd brought her back, one whispered. Doctors later called it a response to familiar stimuli, a surge of recognition of emotional memory. But no one needed the science to explain what they saw. Emma had returned, and she came back to Max. The hospital had quieted as midnight crept in. Lights dimmed, the halls hushed. Emily had finally dozed off in the reclining chair beside Emma's bed, exhaustion having taken its toll. Max lay curled near Emma's feet, his ears twitching at every faint sound, half asleep but alert. Then something shifted. Max's head shot up. He stood abruptly. Body tense, Emma hadn't moved, but something in the air felt wrong. Max paced once, then twice, circling the bed. He pressed his nose against Emma's chest, then let out a sharp, urgent bark. Emily startled awake. What is it? Max barked again, louder. Emma's monitor beeped once, then flatlined. Code blue! A nurse screamed as the alarms triggered. Doctors and nurses flooded the room. Emily was pulled back as Max barked frantically, refusing to leave. Emma had gone into cardiac arrest within seconds. The crash cart rolled in. CPR began. Defibrill paddles clicked, one jolt, two. Then a beep. Her heart restarted. Max stood frozen near the door, panting. Watching through the chaos, she's stabilizing. A doctor called out, pulse returning. Emily collapsed into a chair, sobbing. A nurse knelt beside Max, her voice shaking. He knew before the machines they let him stay. From that moment, Max never left her side again. 4 weeks later, the hospital room looked different. Sunlight spilled through the windows, balloons hung near the bedpost, and the scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. Monitors still beeped, but more gently now, less urgent, more hopeful. Emma sat upright, a blanket over her lap, coloring in a sketchbook. Her cheeks had color again, her eyes brighter. Max rested at her feet, his head gently rising and falling with each breath. Emily sat by the window smiling. Recovery had been slow but steady. Doctors were amazed. It's as if having him near helped regulate her emotionally. One said, "There's something we can't quite explain, but it's real." 2 weeks after waking up, Emma was cleared to go home. The doctors and nurses gathered to send her off clapping as Max walked proudly beside her wheelchair. He wore a bandana that read, "Hero." Emily pushed the chair. Her eyes filled with quiet gratitude back home. Life settled into a soft rhythm. Morning started with Emma feeding Max by the kitchen window. Afternoons were spent in the backyard, Emma drawing Max dozing in the sun. Nights ended with Max curled at the foot of her bed, his soft breathing a lullaby of safety. They healed together. And then Emma laughed. It started small, a giggle that surprised even herself. Then more often soon she was talking again. Slowly but surely one day she told a volunteer, "I think Max fixed my heart." 12 years passed like a blink. Emma, now 20, stood at a bookstore podium. In her hands was a freshly published book titled "The Dog Who Found My Heart, Max." Now graying and slower, lay at her feet. As always, the crowd listened, moved as she read aloud the first chapter as Emma closed her book. The room fell silent, then came the applause, long, heartfelt, and filled with something deeper than words. She looked down at Max, who lifted his tired eyes toward her. "He's not just a dog," she said into the microphone, voice steady. "He's my family. He taught me that love doesn't need to speak and loyalty doesn't need to be explained." People wiped their eyes. Emma smiled. "We think family has to be blood, but sometimes it's who shows up when everything falls apart." Max showed up every single time, and with that, the story came to a close. But its message lived on in every hospital that allowed therapy animals, in every shelter that gave a difficult dog a second chance, and in every heart that believed love could cross species, pain, and silence. For more stories, don't forget to subscribe. The Animals 2.0 YouTube family.